Hey Christine, yeah, so I'm going to give a short presentation on Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, the novel by Jeanette Winchester. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with a short introduction, followed up by a characterization of um the mother and Jeanette. Then I'm going to move on to the structure of the story, where I'm going to talk about a bit about the biblical elements, and then on to the narration, and then at last, humorous devices and conclusion. All right. So I believe that the main theme and core element of this story is growing up, and more specifically, Jeanette growing up, because we see that Jeanette is in a kind of unusual place. She's in a kind of unusual environment, living with only her mother and her father basically not being around. So her mother's pretty much her only guardian. Her father's only, I believe, around at night time, which doesn't really count as a proper father figure to me. But yeah, so this mother is very Christian, which obviously affect Jeanette's ideas about life and opinions. And it's just very interesting to see how Jeanette's evolving through the story and growing up and starting to take her own opinions, making her own opinions, and yeah, just becoming more independent. All right. So as I mentioned, the mother is pretty much what makes the story very interesting. She's having this big influence on Jeanette's childhood and her growing up. So she's a very fundamentalistic Christian, which means that she believes in everything that stands in the Bible. For example, she doesn't approve of lesbian love and so on. Yeah, so pretty much everything the mother does throughout the story is to please God or for God. Her job is being a not a priestess, but she's at least working in a church and also has some missionary jobs throughout the story. But she's having different jobs, but um, they're all having something to do with the church and Christianity, and also the way she's raising Jeanette is in a very Christian way, and she's trying to create this this Jeanette and trying to make her become a proper, respected Christian who follows all the Christian rules and so on. So yeah, and by doing this, the conversation between Jeanette and her mother is automatically becoming very one-sided. In the first parts of her life, for example, um, the conversation pretty much only consists of the mother trying to teach her daughter and asking her Bible quizzes. Yeah, actually, Bible quizzes is a great example because um, the mother keeps asking her these Bible quizzes, Bible pop quizzes that they're supposed to make make Jeanette focus on her Bible reading and make her remember things about the Bible. And Jeanette does take this very seriously. But I'll come into that later. Yeah. So I believe that oranges is a great symbol for the mother being very narrow-minded. Yeah. So the title of the story is "Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit," but the mother believes that oranges are in fact the only fruit. So on page 29, I have this quote um, of the mother referring to an orange. The only fruit, she always said. So she directly says that it is the only fruit. And this is interesting because she believes that this orange is the only way. So the only way is being very narrow-minded on the fruit. It's and it's obviously a symbol for her way of um, her opinions about her existence, about everyone's existence, being very Christianized and being very fundamentalistic about the Bible, that the Bible is the only way and Christianity is the only way. But the mother does evolve a bit throughout the text, even though she is being very static, basically the whole story. At last, she does say, "After all," says my mother, philosophical, "oranges are not the only fruit." So she does change a bit, but we don't really get to see it a lot since the story pretty much ends right after this quote. Yeah, so Jeanette is in the beginning very obedient. The story does follow Jeanette's whole life, and in the beginning, Jeanette is only about like 7 years old. So obviously she's being obedient to her mother, and everything her mother says is true. She's pretty her picture of the world is pretty much only created by her mother and what the mother tells her. Yeah, I have a great quote that shows that she do not show any attitude towards the world and religion. So Jeanette goes. Oh, actually, I need some content to this. So the Pastor Finch is talking about, or asked Jeanette how old she was, and she replied that she's 7 years old. And then Pastor Finch starts talking about the seven seals, and then Jeanette goes, seven seals. I had not yet reached Revelation in my directed reading, and I thought he meant some Old Testament amphibian I had overlooked. I spent weeks trying to find them in case they came up in a question. So this quote states that Jeanette is thinking a lot about these questions and these Bible questions, and yeah, she doesn't even really show that much interest to the Bible at all and to Christianity at all. She more like shows interest to, or shows that she is thinking a lot about getting the Christians right, and that this is actually a big deal for her, not to make her mother, not as in, she wants to make her mother proud, and this is why she's trying to learn the Bible. She's not really thinking for herself; she's just trying to learn it inside out, right? Okay, so but fortunately, Jeanette does evolve throughout the text, and on page 58 we do see um, the first time that she disagrees with the Bible. So she goes, the sermon was on perfection, and it was at this moment that I began to develop my first theological disagreement. So the content isn't that necessary right now, but the sermon was about flawlessness being the same as perfection, and pretty much Jeanette doesn't agree with this. She strictly disagrees with what the pastor says and what the Bible says. And this is the first time we see Jeanette showing signs of independence. Later on, she does become more independent. So in the last part of the text, when Elsie dies, she do take up a discussion with the pastor about hell, and which is pretty brave of her, since the pastor is pretty much the highest authority in the church. So yeah, she's a very dynamic person who evolves throughout the text, and throughout her growing up and growing into adulthood. And again, the orange is also a great metaphor here, or symbol, because as I stated earlier, the mother believes that the orange is the only fruit. The orange representing Christianity in this instance. She says that the orange is the only fruit, but when one of the only times we see Jeanette really interact with an orange is on the hospital, and Jeanette is so what does Jeanette do with this orange? She doesn't just eat it; she peels off the scale, and then she starts building igloos with it. So the thing the mother described as the only fruit, the only way to think, suddenly Jeanette is peeling off the scale and trying to make it something else. So she's thinking outside the box, and already here, it's a symbol of her showing signs that she doesn't agree with what the mom says, even though she's not old enough to take her own stance and say to the mother. She does, excuse me, show signs of her being more independent, and probably not as much as a Christian as the mother. So I'm just going to move right to the structure, which also is very interesting and correlating a lot to what I've just said. So in the Bible, we get all the morals of the Bible explained through external stories. So the Bible is pretty much just built up by a bunch of different anecdotes, who each is trying to learn the reader something about some moral. And in this story, we kind of see the same thing happening, because whenever Jeanette is learning something, we get this anecdote. We do get this anecdote which explains to us what's going on, and explains to us how this is exactly right. And we can just go back to the story about the woman, about perfection slash flawlessness. Yeah, so in this instance, think it's something about a prince trying to find the perfect princess, and then she finds this girl who he thinks is flawless and perfect, but then the girl teach him that she's not flawless or perfect, and she teaches him the difference between flawlessness and being perfect. And this is very interesting because in, this contradicts the Bible. The Bible says that perfection is flawlessness. It's all about cosmos. It's all about everything being harmonic with each other. So we get this. So this novel is pretty much Jeanette's own Bible that that's that tells her about her morals and how she perceives the world, not how some Christian woman perceives the world. Um, and it also correlates to her growing up. We see these biblical elements in the story, just like the Bible, but it's just a different set of rules and different morals presented in this book. So yeah, it's very interesting. We also look at the chapters. The chapters also match with the Bible's chapters, and this is also very interesting because we have in the beginning the Exodus, which is I believe the first part of the first chapter of the First Testament, and Exodus is also the first chapter in Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. So these and in the Bible, Exodus is all about the world being created, and in this novel, um, Exodus is also where we, as a reader, get to know all about the characters and also get introduced to the novel. So the, the chapters, um, the Bible and this book kind of go hand in hand. They're just presenting different points of views, which is very interesting to see. Yeah, so obviously the narration is told through Jeanette's eyes. She's the one we're perceiving the world through, and yeah, we see how Jeanette's dealing with her mother, and we also witness how she's been affected by Christianity um, through her eyes, and see how she learns, and we get to, as I just mentioned, we get to learn these new morals and get to learn these new opinions of what life is through external stories, which is very interesting and correlates directly to the Bible. And to give it even a more philosophical element, Jeanette is also speaking as her grown-up self in the text. For example, she takes some random conflict on page 44 into a very puts it on a very metaphysical level. So it's something about problems correlating with the environment, and she says that a problem is not what constitutes a problem is not the thing or the environment where we find the thing, but the conjunction of the two. Something unexpected is in an unusual place, or our favorite ant in our favorite poker pile, or something usual in an unexpected place, our favorite poker in our favorite aunt. So she's trying to put this on a new level, which is great to see, and this kind of works as a Bible that's trying to teach us about life. So it has a lot of strings to the Bible, definitely. So the humorous devices is also being used a lot, and I believe that this is to describe the absurdity of her life, because she thinks her life is very, very absurd. I have an example here. So certainly it was the belief of the faithful that God was cleansing me of all my demons, and there was no doubt that I would be welcomed back into the fold as soon as I recovered. So this, using the adverb certainly, is kind of does kind of make fun of what her mother believes and what the Christians believe, because she's like, certainly this is not just a normal facial. Actually, you need some content here. I believe that she had just been with Melanie, and she was being punished by supposedly God and having some sort of stomach ache or something. So she's just going like, certainly it was the belief of the faithful God was cleansing me, which is like kind of taking it too serious, and she's pointing out how absurd it really is. Also, this quote, Miss Shrewsbury stared and stared. She stared for so long I began to think about going home. In this instance, she's using over exaggeration and irony again to describe her absurdity, how absurd her life is. Yeah, excuse me, I just forgot the conclusion. So, pretty much what you do believe in the beginning that Jeanette and her mother is the same person, but Jeanette does outgrow her mother a lot throughout the text, which is very interesting to see. We see this orange symbol and so on, and it becomes very clear that the mother and Jeanette is just two very different people, and that Jeanette's childhood, we do not know if Jeanette is being affected by her mother by being very rebellious to her, and that or that the mother's stories about men being terrible creatures is what led to her being a lesbian. Um, but yeah, we would never know. All we know is that Jeanette is showing a lot of signs of independence, and that she's definitely taking her own stand and making her own opinions as she grows older.